Hello,
Hello.
everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Between Two Caricatures. I am your host, Larry West, and along with me is Steve. Don't call me Shirley Case.
Hello.
I
How's it
prom.
going?
What?
How's it going?
Oh, it's going all right. And I do promise those horrible jokes for your intro are going to get slightly better.
Have
For
we lost any sponsors yet?
We have not. Although I'm glad you said that because this show is not yet proudly brought to you by Liquid Death. Murder your thirst with Liquid Death. I'm actually drinking Liquid Death sparkling water right now. I actually am a big fan. Their water comes from the sparkling Alps of Austria, and I sincerely do enjoy them. All their waters put in aluminum cans. So if you're gonna buy water, buy an aluminum can. That way you can recycle it. I've been drinking their stuff for 6 months, and I'm not being paid to say this. I'm not sponsored by them. I would like to be, but hey, here we are. So no, they haven't dropped us as a sponsor yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if they eventually do.
Their loss.
Absolutely, and no one's gain. All right, so here on episode 2 Electric Boogaloo. Oh my, that's a perfect joke because apparently, well, actually, we're going to talk about the deregulation of the Texas electricity market and unfettered capitalism. And Steve, I know you were very much looking forward to this particular one. Hey, it was your idea, right?
Well, I thought it would be more like a portion of a episode because it's obviously a failure for the people of Texas and for the people that own the Capitol. It's a great victory. I forgot his name. He owns, I think, the Dallas Cowboys and also owns a bunch of natural gas companies. Said that it's been paraphrasing a bonanza.
Well, let's see. Oh, Jerry Jones. Yes. As everyone in Philadelphia knows and hates, except for the people in the Northeast who aren't really part of Philadelphia because they're Northeast fans who love the Cowboys. Jerry Jones. Yeah, another reason they hate the Cowboys. Great. But yeah, they're making out like bandits over there, and it is insane. And to your point, Steve, yes, this is basically only a small part of the show. Um, as a lot of people who listen to us may or may not know, Rachel Maddow kind of does the opposite. So what she does is she'll start a show with this long story that may not seem to have a correlation to her real topic, and then she'll get into real topics like, oh, that's why you talked about it to give us some perspective about the bigger issue. We're going to do the reverse. We're going to start with the core part of the issue and then talk about why it relates to something. I kind of like the other method, but hey, it's worth a shot. Let's see how it goes. So, our basically the larger issue, in case anyone's like get to the point of it. The short version is deregulation of the Texas electricity market. The bigger issue is capitalism, deregulated and unregulated capitalism, which is basically what this is going to illuminate. So, as you may or may not recall, in February of 2021, just about a month ago from when we're recording the show, there was a giant freeze in Texas. Basically, hell froze over, or in this case, Texas. From February 13th to the 17th, there was a giant winter storm, and it went down to below freezing, and it snowed. And it snows in Texas periodically. This was like the worst snowstorm they had in at least 10 years. And because of it, all their entire power system basically shut down. Now, 10 years earlier, when a similar storm happened, they were told, well, here's what you have to do in order to make sure that something catastrophic doesn't happen. But they never did this. Now,
There was
in,
another time before that as well.
do you know what time it was?
I don't even know if it was this century, but they've had plenty of warning, and San Antonio learned the lesson. Uh, Everybody was warm and comfortable in San Antonio and still paying their usual utility rates instead of, you know, $2,800 for 2 days of electricity.
Ugh. Absolutely, but unfortunately, we have a little bit before we get to why someone would be paying $2,000 for their electric bill and they don't live in something bigger than a 5-bedroom house. Pardon me 1 second. Okay, I felt burp coming on, and hey, we're gonna say that for posterity. It is the
You should
morning.
drink a little more liquid death. That'll help catalyze that process.
I know our sponsor or would-be sponsor, if they were a sponsor, won't like this, but unfortunately, I am drinking sparkling water version of Liquid Death right now, and that might be why I have a little belch coming on.
Well, you know, in Yiddish, they call seltzer water Greps water.
Greps water?
Belch means belch water.
That's what they call sparkling water.
Greps Vasa.
Liquid Death, there you go. We just got you some more marketing.
Of course, I drink Walmart brand or what's that place? Trader Joe's brand. I just drink whatever I can get a hold of for 79.89 a liter. Liquid Death is excellent product, but it's a little expensive.
$2 a can and $15 to $20 a case. It is very good.
Hey, if you mail order it, it's only $1.33.
Okay, before we give Liquid Death any more publicity here, let's get back to the electricity deregulation for episode 2 here, Electric Boogaloo.
And unfortunately, you can't make seltzer without electricity in the modern world.
Very true. Very true. So for our story, we're going to start on the early morning of January 1st of 2002. George W. Bush has finally been affirmed as the president-elect for the United States. Well, actually, he's already been president for a year. Oh my god, I got the wrong year here. Britney Spears is still topping the charts somewhere. The Backstreet Boys are finally being shown the door. And in the state of Texas, they have decided to deregulate their entire electric grid. The bill, Senate Bill 7 in the Texas Senate, called for the creation of the Electric Utility Restructuring Legislative Oversight Committee to oversee implementation of this particular bill, and that this would take place over several years. Now, there's been a lot of results because of it. The first is there's no agency that can say you have to do this. There's nothing saying you have to keep your prices in a certain line. None of that's true here. It's all gone because it's a completely deregulated market. In fact, even though there is a regulatory agency that does oversee everything, and they can go, hey, you shouldn't do this, or hey, you have to do this, the companies can just go, okay, sure, whatever, we don't care, and we don't have to listen to you anyway. They're just recommendations. And according to a report in 2014 that looked back at 10 years of the deregulation from 2002 to 2012, it cost Texans $22 billion. That's billion with a B. Residents in the deregulated market pay prices that are considerably higher than those who live in parts of the state that were, well, still regulated. For example, the Texas Coalition for Affordable Power, aka TCAP, found that the average consumer living in one of the areas that opted out of deregulation, such as Austin and, like you said, San Antonio, paid $288 less in 2012 than consumers in deregulated areas. Apparently, regulations work. And by the way, all that came from Wikipedia, so no one's like, wait, where did you come up with these facts? I read off Wikipedia. But it was also shown that re-regulating the market would not solve the issues, according to said Wikipedia page. But at the same time, like, really? Just really? By not having regulations, they have put themselves into a world of hurt. Like in 2011, there was a snowstorm that hit Texas, and it almost knocked out their grid. And the state regulator said, "Hey, you need to fix your infrastructure." Now, I know this is probably a 1 in 100 year storm, and we don't believe in global warming or climate change down here in Texas because it's all liberal hooey. Okay, we get that. At the same time, it might be good to do this because, hey, it could happen again, and if it does, people are going to be in trouble. And we don't get a storm like this often, but we're getting them more. So you might want to do this. And of course, everyone said, no, we're not going to do that. You can't make us. We're going to do what we're going to do anyway. I think there's just one more thing I'm going to throw in, which is the windmills. Oh, the windmills. Steve, you can't get power from one of those windmills or wind turbines if they're frozen.
Somehow they managed to do it in Antarctica.
Oh, I see. With those penguins? Did it get the penguins to go up there and defrost them?
Somehow they get it to work in Antarctica.
And
Norway and Germany and Canada and Montana.
You know what all those places have in common?
It's cold.
Liberals.
Not in Montana.
Okay, but reading the environmental impact part of the deregulations of the Texas market here, basically, it didn't really do much because they didn't really want it. Alternative fuel does make up part of the overall grid, but it does make up a considerable portion. It's less than 10% of all renewables. Yet they had the goal to blame solar panels and wind turbines for their grid going down. Like, oh, it got cold. We couldn't get power from it. It's like, dude, most of your energy comes from natural gas and oil. No. So, that unregulated capitalism, what do you think there?
Freedom has its costs. And the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots.
I thought you were going to say the oil of patriots or the natural gas of patriots.
Turns out to be blood one way or another.
Yeah, or at least fracking water. But this is also about unregulated capitalism run amok. And with regulation, this most likely wouldn't have happened. They would have been forced to...
Well, the most important part to remember here is just like with Enron, as they got into a crisis, it's in the interests of the owners not to solve the crisis, i.e. supply enough electricity to meet the demand, but to in fact continue and worsen the crisis because the prices they will continue getting their monopoly prices and the prices will go up. Hence we got to, I think it was $9,000 a megawatt hour, I think was the limit.
Yes.
And it got there and it stayed there.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up that's kind of the point of this. So not only did they go, oh, well, we don't have to do what you said, we can do what we want, they could also charge whatever they wanted. And yeah, they decided to just go as overboard as possible and go,
I thought there's some kind of market, that there's a bidding system. It's automatic, but I thought there's some kind of something there.
So according to, I'm going to look this up, make sure I got this right because this is a doozy. Let's see, I'm looking at the responses here. Oh, there's that belch. All right, power outage from the 2021 storm. Okay, here we go. During the period of the outage, wholesale electric prices went as high as $9,000 a megawatt hour, which is limited as a system cap, compared to a more typical $50 per megawatt hour. Customers with
so in fact, it would have gone higher. It was that's as high as it was programmed. If they programmed a higher limit, like $90,000 a kilowatt hour, so I'm sure they'll correct that soon.
I mean, it's supposed to be deregulated. Where are these government regulations coming from? There's a system cap? How dare you, sir? This is unregulated capitalism.
Well, a system cap sounds more like a software issue than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going to say this: if it went over 10,000, like it was like if the cap was at $9,999, I can actually see that, because otherwise you might start running into weird rounding errors in your code. But 9,000. I mean, I guess you put it there so it doesn't look so fishy, because it could have gone up to 10,000. You don't want to look like that much of a jerk. But sure. Programmers. Blame the programmers like everyone else. Although rightfully so.
Exactly what I'm doing.
Customers with pricing plans based on wholesale prices who had power faced larger bills because of this. Let's see.
Larger. They drain people's bank accounts dry. Retirees lost everything they had because they had all their money in their checking accounts. Because they don't need any of that commie New York investment stuff.
Wait. I'm going to say this now. I am not being serious when I say this. I have to preface that. I mean, they had 16 grand in their bank account and they were able to get it. Who the heck has 16 grand in their bank account? Like, oh yeah, I got 16 grand in my bank account. I barely know people with like a 500 in their account, let alone 2.
Well, there are 2 kinds of people that have 16 grand in their bank account. Wealthy people that go through 16 grand in a few weeks, and unsophisticated people who just don't want the money in their bed sheets and they have it in their bank account.
They have it in their checking and not their savings. I mean, or they could have it in their savings.
They could have been linked to their
exactly.
Accounts.
What's that? There's not enough for my checking account. Take it from the savings. It'll be fine. You know, you put something like that in, you're thinking at worst, maybe 50, 100 bucks, maybe 500. You don't expect 16 grand to magically be deducted from your account because you didn't pay your electric bill. Or to pay your electric bill in this case.
Monty Python had a perfect comeback to this, which I won't bother with. So if you don't know it, you can email us and we'll provide it to you.
I wish I knew it. And
nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh God. No one expects a $16,000 electric bill. God. So as peak, 5 million people went out without power. People with variable rates allowed by the market, they found themselves facing over $5,000 in bills for just 5 days of service. And then it came out after those astronomical bills came out that, those prices weren't supposed to be in effect then. And these state regulators going, well, you really can't charge that price. Like, you shouldn't have been able to, because there was a glitch in the system. You should never have been allowed to do that. So we're going to have to have you, we're going to have to advise you to give, not charge that and give people their money back. And of course the company said, oh, absolutely, we must do that. And of course, I'm kidding. They absolutely said, no, we're going to do what we want and we're keeping the money. We're not reversing the charges.
Snidely Whiplash rides again.
What rides again?
Snidely Whiplash.
Oh, that's a deep cut reference. I know who you're talking about, but man.
Well, that's just whatever. Continue.
No, Snidely has ridden again. So so far one person has been quote unquote punished. That would be the board. That would be a board member of the ETAC. Am I correct?
I thought he was the president.
Oh, right. It was the president. He got fired.
And he turned down his $800,000 in severance pay.
Wait, he turned it down?
That's what I read somewhere.
I mean, if he turned it down, I want to say that's proud, good for him, but at the same time, it's like pretty sure he probably could have gotten like legal consequences if he took it, or it would have been just really bad. I mean, a bunch of people without power freezing their butts off, and you're like, "Hey, I'm the president of this power company. I just got fired. I'm
He's
sorry about
not,
what happened."
well, first of all, he's not the president of the power. He's the president of the people that manage the network. And the people that manage the network are getting the blame here. And I don't think there's any real blame to the people that manage the network, except for the whole system. The blame goes to the people, the generators, the people that manage the natural gas lines, which froze, because when we think of natural gas, we probably think of the wonderful, pure, clean stuff that smells like natural gas that comes out of our stoves or hot water heaters, when in fact, the stuff that goes on a commercial scale to a power plant has all kinds of impurities in it, which are filtered out. And what we call the smell of natural gas is added in so that we could detect it. And the people that own these power plants, because apparently if you go down 291 between Harrah's Casino and the airport, there's a big power plant there, and you can't see too much because there are walls there. And there are a number of power plants along the Delaware River, and they're pretty protected. But in Texas, apparently, they don't have any walls in their power plants because they're not required. And that's part of the reason, is that there's no reason for these companies to spend the money to winterize their facilities, because it just costs them money. And it keeps them from enjoying the fruits of their lack of labors in the higher electric rates that happen when power plants go offline, since Texas is not plugged into the two power grids, the Western and the Eastern power grid, as well as the Mexican power grid, by design, so that they won't have bothersome federal regulations. And that
I'm
whole
now.
diatribe makes me thirsty and wish that I had a liquid death available from Whole Foods for $14.99 a case.
Although I'm intrigued by something you said, and I kind of want you to build on this real quick, because you just said something along the lines of they wanted these people to have to pay more by basically it seems like you said, well, if they don't have.
Yeah, of course I said that. The failure it's a feature, not a bug, because if you get to drive your cost from the traditional, I think you said $50 a megawatt hour,
Right, up to 9,000.
Yeah, you've got every reason. Why should you invest money to prevent that from happening if you own more than one power plant? If you only own one power plant, you might have a reason to do that. But most of the big companies, I would think, own several.
Wait, so you're basically saying that they designed it to fail on purpose so that they can make as much money as possible?
I said that that's the rational reaction to the system that is in there. I won't. I don't know how it was designed, i.e., the way that the
send all lawsuits to Steve Case at
network. The network was designed the way it was designed, and whether or not these people had a hand in designing the networks, not winterizing their facilities, whether they be wind turbines, coal or natural gas. The problem with coal apparently is that the coal freezes, that there's a additive that they can put in so that the coal doesn't freeze. And even a nuclear power plant, the instruments apparently froze on a nuclear power plant, causing that to be shut down.
Whoa.
And they all have a interest in not producing. If you own two plants, if you cut plant A off, you're going to lose X dollars. But if the marginal rate goes to greater than 2x, it's to your benefit to shut down one of your two plants.
Well, absolutely.
And if you own more than one plant, ...
So it's not so much that they intentionally designed it to fail. It's more like it started to fail, and there was no real incentive to fix it because, first off, there's no regulation saying that they have to, but also there's a profit motivation because if they fix it while this is happening, sure, not that many people are going to have power, but then
I'm not saying anything for how they designed it, but the second part is correct.
Right.
That it was to their benefit not to fix these power plants while the situation happened. And the Texas Public Utilities Commission said, no, we're not going to return the $16 billion because it's complicated, I think is pretty much what he said.
Oh, it's too much work.
Well, who knows? Well, it's not a simple matter. Who knows what's going to happen if we start getting involved in all this?
I mean, it's not like people have checking accounts linked to their bills where they could easily trace the amount or anything. And God, oof. I mean, it probably is more complicated than going back and checking records and then going, okay, here's your money back. I mean, hopefully it would be that simple if a competent programmer did it, but it's a deregulated market, so who knows? They probably did get the 500-pound guy in his bedroom in Russia to do it for all we know. I mean, that's who actually did it. But hey, but deregulated capitalism is the bigger problem, which is weird to say because of how many people suffered in multiple ways because of this tragedy. Like, people died because of what happened. People starved, people got sick. Yet somehow this is only part of the bigger problem with deregulated capitalism. And I think one thing in particular, I need to get this off my chest before we go into this, is capitalism itself as the problem and not just part of the problem, which is my weird way of saying that over the last 5 years, capitalism has become the scapegoat. Like, I don't like my job. I hate capitalism. Oh, God, this CD costs more money than it should. Capitalism. I stubbed my toe. Capitalism is to blame. It's become like the raison d'etre, like the easy catch-all solution to say something's bad, therefore capitalism. And that's sometimes true. It's I'm oversimplifying it, of course, but it like capitalism definitely has some serious problems, and the idea of it being this almost omnipotent force that destroys everything it touches feels slightly disingenuous. I can't say the word. So, Steve, I'm gonna let you go on from here since I already gave my annoying 5 cents, and it's 5 cents, not 2 cents, because of capitalism.
I think you're being unfair towards capitalism, and regulated capitalism, as we see in Pennsylvania, works pretty well. Our electric market, admittedly, the stranded charge when PICO first divested itself of, there was a feeling that the power companies built their power generation long ago, and they had stranded assets, and the price was too high. So for a long time here in Pennsylvania, you had to pay on your electric bill a stranded asset price, since they didn't have to compete, so that they could get their money out, which I think kind of sucked. But now we've got kind of a deregulated market, and I use the energy co-op and get 100% renewable energy for, I think it's 3 or 4 cents more a kilowatt hour than Pico's compare rate. If you want to use 100% coal from Appalachia, you could save some money. And people call up all the time and they're like, you want to pay 4 cents a kilowatt hour? Sign right here. I think I'm paying like 12 cents a kilowatt hour, but it's coming from solar energy, wind energy, or captured methane from landfills, which is then used to drive conventional gas-fired generation. And controlled capitalism, regulated capitalism works pretty well.
Yeah,
We've got the invisible hand happening in Texas. The invisible hand wanted to have exactly what happened in Texas. The system worked exactly as designed.
yeah, and that's really more of a case where there is no invisible hand. It's pretty visible, and it's doing very unpleasant things to you. But yeah, like for me, it's like when I defend capitalism to anyone, and obviously for 5 seconds they're scratching their head, like, really, you like, yes, but I absolutely believe it needs to be regulated, and you'll never hear me argue otherwise. Like, it does need to be regulated, because unregulated capitalism is a complete disaster. It makes no sense. It's a race to the bottom. It destroys things. Regulated capitalism actually helps people, more or less. But it can do a lot of good, and when it's regulated, it does do amazing things. Like, to your point, we have an energy market. In Texas, it's completely deregulated, therefore prices can go as high as they want to, at least up to $9,000 an hour per megawatt hour. Or in Pennsylvania, where it's regulated, it's like, well, you can't charge that much, and you have to make sure everything works. I mean, in that case, there's kind of a reason to do something. Or another version would be, that's probably my favorite one. I'm just going to stick with that for now. But regulated capitalism means that there are rules in place to make sure that if you want to start a widget business, another company can't just do horrible things. They can do other horrible things to make sure that you can't go anywhere. I'm making
For the
capitalism sound
longest
great.
time, we had regulated monopolies in this country, and they were very complicated. I took a class in it a million years ago. It was just incredibly complicated, all the rules and the math. And you got a small, tiny return, but it was pretty much guaranteed.
What with the regulated monopolies that were in existence at one point?
Yeah, until Reagan, the Reagan era. The airlines were deregulated under Carter. I think energy was under Reagan, was when that happened. So I'm just looking up. So in Pennsylvania, I'm paying 10.99 cents fixed a kilowatt hour. And you can get variable, and it's currently 11.99 a kilowatt hour. And that's just for the electricity. Then you have to pay, Pico gets a regulated shot for the distribution. So I'm paying 11.99 a kilowatt hour, or excuse me, 10.99 a kilowatt hour for my energy, and then Pico, they seem to get about the same. When I look on the bill, it's my generation and my distribution seems to be about the same.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll pull up a bill and take a look.
Well, while you're doing that, back to the regulated monopolies. I mean, they're still going on today. It's anyone listening here probably found us through Facebook or through Google, which are benevolent overlords of monopolization right now, or
Benevolent?
maybe, yeah, and we can't forget Amazon. And as much as we like those companies, they're monopolies in a different way. And a monopoly today is different than a monopoly 10 years ago, or more importantly, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if you're like, okay, if you want to buy something in this area, you have to buy it from Walmart or one of the many Walmarts, because all we have are Walmarts now, because Walmart's a big company. Now it's like, if you go online and you're looking for information, you're probably going to use Google. There's nothing stopping you from
I
using...
never use Google.
What?
I never use Google.
What do you use?
DuckDuckGo.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say it before you said it. Because
Then
everyone
why do
goes...
you ask? Why don't you go, oh, are you one of these commies that uses DuckDuckGo?
No, you're just one of those hipsters who uses DuckDuckGo. It's like every single time I hear
quite a while, and apparently it's not as good as Google. I thought it was as good as Google, but apparently Australians, because they were going to have to lose Google, are saying that DuckDuckGo isn't quite as good. But maybe it's because nobody in Australia uses it, so it didn't learn. That's
definitely a big part of it. And also, two things we're going to know about DuckDuckGo. One, they are a local to Philadelphia company. Like they're headquartered like either in or right outside Philadelphia.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I really did not know that.
And two, they'll probably never have us as a sponsor because of the derogatory things you just said about them in Australia. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for losing us another potential sponsor.
Oh.
But no.
In fact, if you join DuckDuckGo, you'll help it to become smarter.
Well, actually,
I do that Google is.
Well, I actually do periodically use DuckDuckGo. Basically, the new variation of I don't have a TV in my house is I don't use Google, I use DuckDuckGo. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not besmirching the good name of DuckDuckGo. Quick, really brief aside. Back in 2013, when we all found that NSA was spying on us, and of course they're spying on our show because they downloaded it and decided to listen to us. There was a lot of push for a privacy-focused browser, and well, DuckDuckGo was private, as in it didn't remember you. You could use their browser. I mean, you could use their search engine, and it wouldn't remember your data. It wouldn't sell your data. It was just private, which is great. And I've used it periodically ever since. Steve, to your point, and with no animosity met here, no, their results are not as good as Google. But no one has results as good as Google because everyone uses Google.
Well, DuckDuckGo is good enough most of the time for me.
Oh, same here. But that's also kind of to the larger point. Like I started to say, no one's forcing you to use Google for your search, but you do anyway, or most people do for most of their search.
There's always Yahoo.
That was the thing with Yahoo at one point. Yahoo was a monopoly because people were looking for things. There was Ask Jeeves and a bunch of others, but it's like, no, I'm using Yahoo.
Oh, Ask Jeeves was cool. That's a while ago now.
Oh God, but that's how long Yahoo was like the dominant search engine, like 20 years ago, and that's kind of the point of the new monopolies. Like, or what makes my monopoly should be its own show, but we're not going to do that. But what's going on is Google owns YouTube now, and YouTube is where basically everyone watches video. YouTube wasn't owned by Google. It wasn't created by Google. They just bought them up. Instagram, which was originally this really annoying hipster-based app where people would use it to take photos of themselves with filters was bought by Facebook. It's no longer the hipster central thing. It's actually kind of neat, and I use it myself to post everything, like photos. And I'm getting off point here, but Facebook just bought another company and made themselves bigger. So the modern monopolies aren't forcing you to use their service. You just wind up using them because where else are you going to go to get the exposure or the community that you're looking for or the convenience you're looking for? One reason Facebook is as big as it is now is they started getting big. They recently released their product in the mid 2000s, mid aughts. And at the time, the big social network at the time was, of course, MySpace. Everyone had a MySpace account. Who wouldn't have a MySpace account? You didn't have a MySpace account, did you?
No, I did not.
Oh, you hipster.
I didn't have any of that stuff.
First, you're too cool for Google. Now you don't even have a MySpace account. Do you even own a TV, Steve?
Yeah, but I don't watch it, and we don't have cable. We get TV through some third-party company. I don't know.
Your Belle and Sebastian album is in the mail, my friend.
What? I forgot the name. Like, I never get to watch the TV for various reasons, so I don't even know. My wife likes to run that whole operation anyway.
Okay.
Um,
Before we go too far off the topic here, because that's way too easy for both of us. But Amazon is another example. Well, right. I'm sorry, Facebook. I was talking about Facebook. So MySpace was a big thing, and then Facebook came out. And the reason I firmly believe this is the reason Facebook became a big thing. MySpace was around. Everyone had a MySpace account, but Facebook did something different. It allowed you to log in to other sites with a Facebook account. And that was unheard of. Normally you had to, you go to Huffington Post, for example. Okay, I want to comment, pardon me, on Huffington Post comments. I'm on Huffington Post stories. I guess I have to create a Huffington Post account. No, you can use your Facebook account. And in 2010, that was a revolutionary idea. Like, wait, what? I don't have to create a new account for this? I can just use, oh my God. And it started popping up more and more and more, where you could just use your Facebook account to log into all these websites. And it made life easier. And I think that's the reason why they overtook MySpace. For, among other reasons, that was the main reason. It was easier. It was more convenient. And Amazon has that same kind of thing where it's like, well, you can either go to the store and you can go out. I'll give you an example. Like, I go to FYE and I still buy CDs. Nowadays, I sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but I still prefer my damn CDs. So I will go to FYE and go, hey, do you have a copy of Devin Townsend's new album? First they go, who the heck is Devin Townsend? I've never heard of him before. But apparently, no, we don't have it. Would you like me to order it for you? And even 2004, when I worked at a record store, I would never order a CD. I would just find it online. And that's really the convenience of Amazon. You're able to find things that you probably can't find at your local store because there's no demand for it and get it there. There's nothing saying you have to go to Amazon to do certain things. It's just easier and more convenient. So modern monopolies are weird. Would you agree?
The monopoly part of my electric bill is Pico's distribution charge. From January 25th to February 23rd, we used 973 kilowatt hours, or almost 1 megawatt. And for distribution at 6.609 cents a kilowatt hour, we paid $64.24. And then the unregulated part, we used the energy co-op, and we used 972 kilowatt hours, and we paid 8.99 cents kilowatt hour, which is regulated by the energy co-op, but I could choose other ways to do it. And that was $87.30 giving me an electric bill of $161.84 for just under a megawatt, 972 kilowatt hours. And natural gas, we could do other people, but we're with Pico for that.
Okay.
And don't walk on the computer. The cat's here. Delivery, so that's for the pipes and everything.
I gotta have pipes.
36.463 36 cents for a CCF, which I was used to therms. I guess a CCF is 100 CFs, whatever CCF is, for 73.29 plus 11.75 for the customer charge, which I guess is me paying for the right to plug in to take advantage of being plugged into the system.
Right.
And then Pico for natural gas for 201 CCF is charging me $37,503. But I've got a discount because apparently gas is cheap and it's 3.6 cents a CCF cheaper. So long story short, we're paying what are we paying for gas here?
Too much?
Well, it's 73, just under $150, 96, just over $150. But
okay.
Again, the Pico delivery part is regulated at this is complicated. I'm looking at it. I never really understood it.
Let's hold off on your electric bill just a bit here.
Well, the gas bill is more. I understand the electric bill because I always looked at it, and being unregulated on the gas bill, the electric bill, I know what's happening with that because I've had the energy co-op for maybe 10 years, and gas just became, you could pick your supplier, and the energy co-op is a lot more. For electricity, it's just a little more, but for gas, I chose to remain with Pico. But anyway, we should hold off from that. You're right. And so what you were going to say is?
No, I forgot. Look what you did. You made me forget. But I can at least bring up an interesting analogy, though, or at least a use case, as it were. So in Philadelphia, for those who have no clue what on earth happens here, among other things, if you're not running from gritty, you're not living in Philly. But more importantly, we have a gas company, and all natural gas in Philadelphia is done through the city of Philadelphia. The company is called Philadelphia Gas Works, or PGW. There's been a lot of talk for a long time about selling off PGW, along with the Philadelphia Water Department, which does not actually have an acronym. It's just the Water Department here in Philly, which is weird.
It's PWD. It says it on the trucks.
No one calls it that. We all call it the Water Department. No one calls it PWD.
Our water here just got sold to Aqua a little while ago.
Oh, God. So, for years, there's been a lot of talk about selling off PGW. PGW being sold off is one of the most controversial things here in Philadelphia because the city owns it. And the people who argue the people who argue for selling it off make the same argument, which is, well, the city of Philadelphia owns it. And because of that, they say, first off, the city of Philadelphia should not be in the gas business. And then they'll go, and also, the city of Philadelphia isn't maintaining their gas lines properly. And they're right about that last part. They're not maintaining them properly because you have a city with I believe, a 50% poverty rate. And when you have people who are poor and can barely pay their bills, I can't imagine how many people are on LIHEAP in Philadelphia. I'm going to say before the pandemic, it was probably between 30 and 40%. At least that. And for those who don't know, LIHEAP is basically a government assistance program to help you pay your energy bills. And if you're getting gas heat for your home, my house, it's a 3-bedroom house. I'm paying roughly. I'm not looking at my bill. I'm going to say between $250 to $350 a month during the hard winter. I've been bringing it down through other methods. I think my last bill was probably 200, but you get my point. If if your gas bill is normally like $50 during the summer and it balloons up to 200, I'm just trying to give you a general idea here. So you have a lot of people who aren't paying their gas bills, and the lines are degrading because the city of Philadelphia isn't paying to get them replaced. So the argument is, should that be privatized? There was a movement about. I'm not going to try to get the year right. I'm going to say about within the last 5 years. There we go. In the last 5 years, the city of Philadelphia got close to selling off PGW, and a lot of people were mad about it, and it never happened. Our rates are going up a little bit, and we haven't had a lot of gas lines explode, which is a benefit.
Well, they've also cut down on people running neoprene or rubber lines to their neighbors' gas meters and stealing their neighbors' gas, which kind of was big in the 90s and 2000s.
God, I never even knew about that.
Oh, well, that's because you live too far away for effectively to do that. It apparently was big in apartments.
Well, I never even heard of it, but I believe you're right. But yes, the idea of deregulating, or more importantly, privatizing. In fact, privatization is just another form of capitalism being deregulated to some degree. So it never happened. We haven't had catastrophic consequences. I still don't believe it should ever become privatized, because I firmly don't.
For what it's worth,
Yeah.
in this area, Aqua is now replacing all kinds of water mains, which that was the argument, is that the city couldn't afford to replace the water mains. So for years, you've seen Aqua. They replaced on our street the water mains, and you can go on the Cheltenham website and always see. For those that don't know, Larry actually lives in the city of Philadelphia, and I live in Montgomery County, in one of the only Class A townships, Cheltenham Township.
What the hell's Class A? I've never heard that term before.
I used to know and I forgot. I'll look it up.
You sound like me in my AST degree. Like, oh, you have a 4-year AST degree? Yes. What does that stand for? I have no idea. But please, go on. You were talking about how you live in a very well-off township?
I didn't say well off. I just said Class A. Oh, here we go. List of in Wikipedia.
He's bringing out the Wikipedia, folks. So while you're looking it up, I'm going to mention
Apparently, we're under some kind of code. 939 boroughs are under some kind of code that the state regulates us.
Well,
on some way.
God, now I'm wondering if your Pennsylvania is under that jurisdiction, but I'm pretty sure they're not, or they are, and they're mad about it.
York, PA?
Yeah.
I'll tell you in a second. York Haven and York Springs are, but I don't see York listed under the Wikipedia list.
Well, that's why they're so ornery over there. They're making sure that the state regulators can't come in and encroach on their freedom. And by freedom, I mean really just bad things. So, also, Philadelphia Water Department, it's run by the city. Same argument about privatization there. And to Steve's point, we have water mains bursting every once in a while, and it's pretty bad. And no one wants to privatize it. It's definitely a thing that there's more. That's kind of crazy. There's more of a push to privatize the gas department than the water department, even though the water department needs more work and a lot more help.
Gas blows up and water just leaks.
But it floods things and ruins property.
But that's all the more reason to have patronage, because if PWD causes problems, then they'll fix it, as long as you use your approved contractors.
They actually won't. I actually had to point this out. So a few years ago, I'm on a bus going somewhere, and I look out the window, and I see all this water rushing from the ground. I'm like, what the heck? It was on the sidewalk. It was that area between.
It's gold, clear gold.
Well, I wish the city of Philadelphia felt the same way, because I reported to the water department. I gotta tell you where it was. It was on that area between the sidewalk and the street. That little strip of land. I don't think it has a name. It should, but that little strip of land.
The gutter.
The what?
The gutter.
It was a grass gutter, I guess. I mean, it's above ground. It's grass. But, sir, okay, we're going to go with the grass gutter then. The grass gutter had a leak, or a geyser in this case. I could see water coming from the ground. I was like, that's not good. So I contacted the Philadelphia Water Department, because no one calls it PWD, but I called the water department and said, hey, there's water coming from the ground at this property. You need to take a look. They got back to me and said,
we don't got to do nothing, damn it.
Actually, they did say there's nothing they could do, because the person had an outstanding water bill, and they weren't going to shut it off because of that. They had a water leak or a water main burst, and they weren't going to fix it because the person didn't pay their water bill. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. Oh, what's that? You mean we're losing all this money? Well, we'll just continue losing money, and even more on top of that, because that person didn't pay. The hell? And that could be an argument for privatizing it. It's not, but it's an argument someone could make. But when you have unregulated capitalism, people get hurt. And one more example I'm going to throw out, because we're over time here. But one more example I'm going to throw out is GameStop. I mentioned before I own stock. I still own stock. I own GameStop as well. I own 5 shares. It is my interest for that stock to keep going up. And I'm going to talk about it, not in the sense that I'm trying to make money from the stock and other stocks I also own, but because there is an unregulated capitalism problem here that links to our larger point. I really just want to do an entire show about this, but I can't right now. I'm going to try to streamline this as much as I possibly can. For those who, back in January of this year, GameStop went from being worth about $5 to $15 a share, all the way up to over $400. That was in January of 2021. It was insane. People were amazed by it, and it went up that much in the span of about a week and a half. The reason it went back down was because Robinhood, along with a few other brokerage houses, said you can no longer buy the stock. And when that happened, the value of the stock tanked from $470 to about $170 in the span of 3 hours, which is insane. It is a crash. And that move also affected other stocks, including AMC, KOSS, Bed Bath & Beyond, BlackBerry, Nokia, and probably a few more I can't think of right now, because I'm trying to remember all of this. And it was insane. So they said, all you can do is sell it, you just can't buy it. You can only sell. And I talked to Steve about this a bunch of times, and the argument that Robinhood made was, as the best analogy I can give is, it's like you go to the casino and you place a $1 million bet. You place the bet, and then next thing you know, you basically have $1 billion. You won $1 billion on a bunch of bets. That's amazing. Good for you. And then the owner of the casino goes over and goes, look, or they're told by someone like, look, we can't cover that guy's bet. We can't do that. So in this case, they had to shut everything down and go to the bank and go, hey, we need money to cover this bet. That doesn't mean they can't afford the bill. They just don't have it on hand. So they had to go to someone for that money. In that case, With Robinhood, they had to go to Citadel in order to get the money, and Citadel had bailed out Melvin Financial, who lost billions of dollars because of GameStop. So that leads to a lot of other things, and people were like, "What the hell's going on here?" Price of stock went down to $40 as of 2 weeks ago. Like it just tanked. So what does this have to do with unregulated capitalism? It sounds like capitalism worked. A stock went from being worth nothing to being worth a lot to being worth almost nothing again. That sounds like the free market handling itself.
Well, if we need to step back a step, the whole idea of stock is so that you own a part of a company. And this isn't about GameStop gaining capital. It's about people playing casino in another venue.
Exactly. And that's really what the stock market is at this point. And Steve, to your point, like, oh, it's you owning stock in a company.
Yeah, you don't get any voting. If you bought a share of GE or GM or maybe even Tesla,
I own
you
all
get to
three of those,
vote.
by the way. Go on.
Yeah, well,
No, go on. Go
you're
on.
much wealthier than I. Capitalist. I'm gonna have to call you Capitalist Larry.
Actually, I first off, I also didn't own a full share of Tesla. I wish I had. I owned past tense a quarter of a share, and I sold that off because that thing has tanked like crazy. And it's like, you know what? I lost money. I rather sell everything I have in it and then buy my way back in because that way I don't feel bad about it. It's not a great way of doing it. It gets felt better. I'm sorry. Please go on.
If you get a voting share of a stock, then you're linked to the company. But with GameStop, how are you linked to GameStop? How are they profiting from all the volatility in their shares?
I am so glad you asked, and that's actually this is why I want to do a show just about this because there's a lot going on there. But the super short version of it is they actually didn't, and they could have. AMC. I'll give you two really quick examples. AMC said, "Wow, our stock price went up a lot. It went up to 20. It went from like $5 to 20. When it went that high, they're like, you know what? We're gonna have a stock offering, and they made like what was it? They got like $10 billion or something like that from stock offerings, or 10 million. They basically paid off all their debt and were able to stay in business and then start making more money because they paid off all their debts. KOSS, I think they're called KOS. I think that's how you pronounce the name of the company. That stock went from being worth, and I'm not making these numbers up. In fact, I'm going to look it up while I'm doing this to make sure I got this right. And also, Steve, yes, I just got your taxes. Sorry.
Oh no problem. If
He texted me, folks, so we knew how long we were over.
we're now at 63.
Our goal for the show was 45 minutes. Okay, so KOS used to be worth like $2.38 back in December of last year. Because of all the stuff that happened with GameStop, there were a bunch of stocks that just went up at the same time because that people started talking about them. One I missed was something called KOS. It went from $2 to $3 to, at its peak, $64 a share. The people who own that company, it's a family business. They got as much money as they could out of that as they freaking could. Like, of course you do. It's worth $64 a share. You own 10,000 shares, and it used to be worth like $3. You get as much as you can. So they were able to restructure, just make a lot of money, good, invested back in. The shares are worth now about $15, but they made their money. You get the point. But GameStop never did that. They never offered stock when it was like $400 a share, or more accurately, $350 a share the night before it went up to $400. They could have and made a lot of money, but they didn't. They never did anything like that. And the only reason the stock is now up, it went from 40 to 200 in a day but then it went right back down to 130 because it was a fluke. But it shot up 50% today because Ryan Cohen, who is the CEO of Chewy, if I know I'm getting some of this wrong, who is one of the owners of Chewy.com, bought a stake in GameStop of about.
Oh, he was a co-founder of Chewy. Yeah, I read
Right.
about that.
So he owns like 24% of GameStop right now. They just said he's going to help transition them into being an e-distributor. So basically making it more of an electronic showcase. Because of that, shares went up like 40, 50% today. So no, they didn't actually capitalize on the fact that their shares were worth so much money. They never actually did that, which is insane. There probably are reasons for it, but it's insane. But to your point of, hey, you own a share of a company, well, you don't. So there's different classes of stock now. It's not like you buy a share of Disney, therefore you own a part of Disney. It's more like if you buy Disney Class A, yes, you do own a part of the company. But if you own Class B or Class C, let alone a warrant, and if no one knows what the hell I'm talking about with warrants, don't worry about. I barely understand them too. You don't really own a part of the company like someone who has Class A stock has. Now, the stock I own is definitely Class A. At least I'm pretty sure that's what Robinhood gave me. But the idea that you're investing in a company long term, that's kind of gone. The idea of believing in a company and investing and letting it sit for a long time so it can mature and the company can do well because you like the company, that's kind of gone too. It really is just a casino at this point. And one thing in particular that happened during all this craziness back in January is when GameStop hit 400, the Dow Jones crashed a bit. Now, I liked this, and I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure this is what happened. All the classic stocks, Ford, GM, all the you invest in this, you don't have to worry about it kind of stocks, they all started to tank when GameStop went up, and I think it's because they had to cover their bets. They knew they were losing money. Melvin Capital, for like I pointed out, they were losing money hand over fist, and it had to come from somewhere. So they sold off the piggy bank stocks, the things that will never go down, and then it started to tank. And I think what we're seeing in terms of unregulated capitalism is the stock market no longer makes sense. It stopped being connected to reality a long time ago. But if you really want to go, when did the stock market no longer reflect what's going on in the economy? March of last year would be it. The stock market tanked when everything shut down, and it made perfect sense. And what should happen right now, as I'm talking, it's sunk down to about 18,000 points, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And I thought that's good. It's been overvalued for a long time. It's a long time coming. It's going to be rough for a while, but it'll eventually recover, and that'll be good. I'm going to buy some stock now because it makes sense, because it's really low. I don't expect to make my money back anytime soon. And what should have happened is the Dow Jones should barely have cut top 25,000. It should still have been low for most of last year because massive unemployment. No one's really able to spend. Yes, there's some stimulus money coming in, but not enough. There's no long-term ways of doing it, and the economy's basically in shambles, and no one's really working. It's really dire. Instead, it started reaching record highs after 6 months. It fully recovered, and then it got bigger and bigger. It reached over 30 grand. I mean, 30,000 points in the last 2 months, and reached the record high today. It doesn't make sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because it's completely devoid of reality, because it's a casino. It really is just a casino. People are going in there, getting as much money as they can, and then leaving. Tesla's a really good example. Last example, I'll shut the heck up and I'll let you go back on. Tesla was shorted. And in fact, what you saw with Tesla was a short squeeze over the course of a year. It went from being worth $100 a share all the way up to $850. I'm not looking at the numbers, but I'm going to go with that's about the range. That's I mean, that's an insane increase
Well,
about
Tesla's
over.
a good example because
Yeah,
Tesla's worth more than Ford. Tesla's got, look at Tesla cars. There's also Tesla Powerwall and Tesla solar cell, and they're different than SpaceX.
right.
But the Tesla car is not a great product. The chassis is a wonderful product. They're 5 years ahead of their competition, but their cars kind of suck.
So we've already lost Tesla as a sponsor. Thank you for that.
I really don't think that Elon needs us.
But we need Elon's money. But please go on.
Well, I think that Powerwall is kind of a good technology, and their Tesla's solar has said that they're gonna sell solar. They will beat anybody's quote for your house. So Tesla, it does some good things, but Tesla cars, what you're going to see is Tesla should be like way back in the day. You'd buy a chassis from one company and you'd buy a body from another company, and there might be a future in that, but we're getting into really very arcane automotive bullshit.
Understood. But yes, Tesla is overvalued. In fact, Elon Musk
They're
tweeted as
greatly
much.
overvalued.
What?
They are greatly overvalued.
Absolutely. Last summer, Elon Musk said we're an overvalued company. And people thought that was brilliant because it reduced the stock price down. And then people were able to buy it up, and then the price went back up. And they are absolutely overvalued. I'm a shareholder or a slightly former shareholder. I still own like a thousandth of a share right now. But they are absolutely overvalued. And I will say that because they are. But it was a short squeeze that lasted a year because people said, "Oh, it's not really worth that. I think it'll go lower," and then it kept going up despite them. So now we're seeing it come back to more to reality at about $500 a share, and that's even with a stock split, if I recall correctly. So it's down to $500, about $550 a share as I'm talking right now. Again, not looking at the numbers.
And the Tesla supercharger network is unparalleled.
That came from nowhere. What?
Well, if you want Elon's money, we've got to put in good good plugs, and I could really go for a refreshing, cool drink right now. Whatever.
Oh right, yeah. You need some liquid. Do you need some liquid death to murder your thirst?
Well, fancy that you say so. Yes. So let's end here so I can go and get some liquid death.
Well, I'm good with that, but like I like to do, one political rant to end the show for everyone. Is there? I'll let you go first, Steve. What's your political pet peeve for the week?
In the COVID stimulus / relief bill, not a single Republican joined in, which I think will hurt them, but they're silly, and I don't expect any Republican participation. Unfortunately, Manchin might make this different, but I really don't think they want to participate in the infrastructure bill that's soon to come, and I think we're talking $4 trillion.
God, yeah. If you can't even get them for 1.9 trillion, let alone I can't even imagine them at 4.
Well, how are they? It's going to hurt them because they're not part. How are they going to sell this to their base?
We saved you
Oh,
money because we didn't pay for a $4 trillion bill. Those damn Democrats.
and hey, who cares that you don't have any water because, uh, like Flint, there's some kind of water crisis going on in Mississippi as well, and
Oh yeah.
uh,
Hey,
whatever.
Rick Perry said it himself. People in Texas will gladly give up whatever it takes to make sure that they're not under the heel of government regulation.
Federal government, they're under Texas regulation,
They're not even under Texas regulation.
but the market is regulated, so it's unregulated. The lack of regulation is the regulation.
They're regulate. Fine. I'm not even going to try to touch this. And I'll also add to Steve's point, which is, not only did no Republicans vote for it, they got amendments into the bill, and they still didn't vote for it.
Oh, they did that with Obamacare too.
Have we learned nothing from that? It feels like we haven't. In fact, that actually does segue perfectly to what my political pet peeve is. The minimum wage. As you probably recall from the last episode, if you actually listened to it and if you actually cared, I don't really care either way. The minimum wage. Actually, it's a quick feedback too. So in the last episode, we talked about the $15 minimum wage. How do you do it? Because you don't overrule. We both agreed you don't overrule the Senate parliamentarian, and you don't abolish the filibuster by doing it. How do you do it? And Steve was right. You do it as an amendment to a must-pass bill. And Bernie Sanders said, here's my amendment to a must-pass bill to raise the minimum wage. And my pet peeve is, not only did it show that if it wasn't a bill, they probably would have failed passing the bill, but it also showed, because everything about it made me mad. The amendment was good. I was all for it. Phasing it over 4 years, I'm all for it. 8 people, 7 Democrats and 1 independent voted against the amendment. And I wish that was my pet peeve. My pet peeve isn't even that. It's that Kristen Sinema decided to do her worst John McCain impression and walk up to the dais in order to give a dramatic thumbs down to the bill, to the amendment. God, really? Back in 2014, she even tweeted that the raising the minimum wage made a lot of sense. And then to betray the people of Arizona in such a way is just disgusting. The entire thing is disgusting. We need to raise the minimum wage, and $11 is not even close. $11 is basically a slap in the face. It's basically saying we'll get you to $11 in 4 years, and then we'll adjust it for inflation. So you're going to underpay me and after 4 years, and then make sure I continue to be underpaid. Oh, isn't that great? That's my political pet peeve.
All right, till next week.
Till next week, I also need more liquid death because my voice is gone. So from all of us here at Between Two Characters, I'm Larry.
And I'm Steve.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.